The bright lights of the meeting room hurt Captain Ryan Miller's eyes. He stood straight in his crisp blue uniform as the Earth Alliance's best hope for peace. Across the table sat General Vrockthar of the Zax-Kareen Empire, his scaled skin shimmering under the lights. The alien was nearly 8 feet tall with 4 arms and eyes that seemed to look in all directions at once. "We come with respect and hope for friendship," Ryan said, offering the traditional Earth greeting of an open hand. The translator hummed. Then General Vrokhthar's mouth opened wide, showing rows of sharp teeth. A sound like stones grinding together filled the room. The other aliens stepped back. "Did I say something funny?" Ryan asked quietly to Linda Jones, the xenolinguist beside him. Linda's face went pale. That wasn't laughter. That was their war cry. Before Ryan could speak again, General Vrockthar slammed all 4 hands on the table. "You show your palm." The empty hand. "This is the worst insult in our culture. It means you think we are not worth bringing weapons to meet." "No, that's not what we mean." Ryan started, but the general was already leaving, his guards close behind. 2 days later, Ryan sat in the dark meeting room of the Earth ship Intrepid. The video screen showed the smoking ruins of Research Station Delta. All 47 people there, scientists, support staff, and their families, were gone. "This is what happens to the weak." General Vrokhthar's message played again. "Humans are soft creatures who do not understand power. You are not worthy of respect in this galaxy." Admiral Kate Weber's face appeared on another screen. "Captain Miller, this wasn't your fault. No one could have known about their hand customs." Ryan nodded, but the weight on his shoulders felt too heavy to bear. "What happens now?" "The President is speaking to Congress in 1 hour. We expect a declaration of war by tomorrow morning." The Admiral's voice was firm but sad. "The Zax-Kareen have already attacked 2 more outposts. They're not waiting for us to decide." Outside the window of the Intrepid, Earth looked small and blue. Ryan thought of all the people there who had no idea that everything was about to change. "We're outgunned, Admiral. Their ships are faster. Their weapons are stronger." Ryan spoke the hard truth they both knew. "Yes," she agreed. "But they don't know humans very well, do they?" The next day, as war was officially declared, General Vrockthar stood on the bridge of his massive warship. He watched recordings of humans running from their burning research station. "Such weak creatures," he told his officers. "No proper defenses, no fighting spirit. This war will be short." His second-in-command, Sub-Commander Krull, nodded. "Our intelligence shows they have only been in space for a short time, General. They have few allies and fewer ships." "Good," Vrockthar said. "We will teach them quickly about their place in the galaxy. Then we will take their worlds for our empire." As the Zax-Kareen fleet prepared for what they expected would be an easy conquest, they did not understand one important thing about humans. Nothing is more dangerous than a creature fighting for its home. Back on Earth, in training centers across the planet, soldiers prepared for a war no one had expected. Among them was a young woman from Ohio named Allison Reeves. She had joined the Marines 3 years ago, looking for direction in life. Now, as she watched the news about the destroyed research station, something hardened inside her. "You okay, Reeves?" her squad leader asked. "I will be," she said quietly, "when we teach those aliens not to laugh at humans." She didn't know then that she would one day stand face to face with General Vrockthar himself, or that the fate of the war might rest on what happened when she did. 6 months passed like a bad dream. Sergeant Allison Reeves stared out the window of the transport ship as it landed on Novaterra. The colony world still looked peaceful from above. Blue oceans, green forests, and the white buildings of the main city shining in the morning sun. Hard to believe that the Zax-Kareen fleet was only 3 days away. "First time on Novaterra?" asked the soldier next to her, a big man named Tim Garcia. "First time on any colony world," Allison said. She was small for a Marine, only 5'4", but what she lacked in size she made up for in speed and brains. "You? Born here," Tim said, his eyes sad. "My parents and little sister are still in the capital. They refuse to leave." Allison nodded. Many colonists were staying to fight. After losing 3 other human worlds to the Zaxkarine, people were tired of running. The ship landed with a bump, and soon Allison and her unit were walking into the colony's military base. The commander, Colonel Frank Dawson, didn't waste time with welcome speeches. "The enemy will be here in 3 days," he told the new arrivals. "They have more ships, better weapons, and they're led by General Vrokthar himself." He pointed to a picture of the tall, 4-armed alien. "This is the same general who destroyed our research station and started this war. He's never lost a battle." "Until now," someone said from the back of the room. Colonel Dawson almost smiled. "I like your thinking, soldier. Now here's how we're going to make that happen." The plan was not what Allison expected. Humans had lost every direct battle with the Zaxkarine so far. Their ships were too strong, their weapons too powerful. But Novaterra had something the other colonies didn't: an extensive network of underground mines and tunnels. "We'll let them land," Colonel Dawson explained. "Let them think we're weak. Then we'll hit them where they least expect it." 2 days later, Sergeant Reeves led her squad through training in the dark tunnels. Her team included Tim Garcia, a quiet sniper named Ben Lee, and a former tunnel worker named Olivia Wells who knew every passage under the colony. "The Zaxkarine are used to fighting in open spaces," Allison told her squad. "Down here, their size works against them. They'll have to bend down in the smaller tunnels. Their fancy weapons might backfire in tight spaces." "Will it be enough?" Ben asked, cleaning his rifle by the light of a small lamp. Allison didn't have an answer. No one did. On the 3rd day, the sky filled with Zaxkarine ships. They landed outside the city, thousands of alien soldiers marching toward the colony. The human defenders fired a few shots, then retreated into the city as planned, making it look like they were already beaten. In his command ship, General Vrokthar watched with 4-eyed pleasure. "See how they run," he told his officers. 3 of their worlds have fallen. This one will be the same. "They are fighting differently here," said his second-in-command. "More tricky. Tricks won't save them," the general said. "Send in the first wave. Let's finish this quickly." As alien troops entered the city, Allison and her squad were already deep underground, setting traps and preparing ambush points. Through her comm unit, she heard the colony governor's message to the Zaxkarine. "General Vrokthar," said Governor Paul Martinez, his voice calm despite the danger. "We are just a small colony. We pose no threat to your empire." The general's reply was cold. "Then surrender now, and I will be merciful." "I'm afraid we can't do that," the governor answered. "You see, we humans have a saying. It's not the size of the dog in the fight, it's the size of the fight in the dog." The alien general didn't understand the saying, but he would soon learn what it meant. As his troops moved deeper into the city, the ground beneath them began to rumble. The real battle for Novaterra was about to begin. The first explosion caught the Zaxkarine completely by surprise. 1 minute, their front line was marching down the main street of Novaterra's capital. The next, the road collapsed beneath them, sending 30 alien soldiers tumbling into a hidden pit. "Now," Allison shouted into her comm unit. All across the city, the ground seemed to come alive. Tunnel entrances opened in walls, and under parked vehicles, human soldiers appeared from nowhere, fired quick bursts at the confused aliens, then vanished again. In his command ship, General Vrokthar slammed all 4 fists onto his control panel. "What is happening?" he demanded. "Where are they coming from?" "They're using the mining tunnels, General," his second-in-command reported. "Our scanners show hundreds of passages under the city." "Send in the heavy units," Vrokthar ordered. "Burn those tunnels out." But the heavy units, massive walking tanks with energy cannons, soon faced their own problems. The streets were too narrow for them to move easily. When they fired their weapons, the energy blasts bounced off specially placed mirrors, sometimes hitting their own forces. Underground, Allison led her squad through dark passages lit only by their small headlamps. "Garcia, Lee, take the North Junction," she ordered. "Set charges at points 3 and 5. Wells, you're with me." Tim and Ben moved off into a side tunnel, while Allison and Olivia continued forward. "The aliens have entered tunnel section B12, Olivia reported, checking her handheld map. "They're trying to follow our forces down." Allison smiled. "Perfect." Above ground, Colonel Dawson and Governor Martinez watched the battle from the colony's central building. "Our people can't keep this up forever," the governor said, his face worried as he looked at the displays showing Zaxkarine troops still landing outside the city. "They don't need to," Colonel Dawson replied. "They just need to make General Vrockthar angry enough to make mistakes." The plan was working. By the end of the first day, the Zaxkarine had lost over 200 soldiers, but had captured almost none of the city. General Vrockthar was furious. "These humans fight without honor," he shouted at his war council. "They hide like rats instead of facing us directly." "Perhaps we should pull back and bomb the city from orbit," suggested one officer. "No." Vrockthar's 4 eyes blinked in anger. "I will not destroy what I came to conquer. And I will not let these weak humans think they have driven me away." He pointed to a map of the city. "Double our forces in the central sectors. Flush them out of those tunnels. Show no mercy." 3 days later, Allison's squad was running low on ammunition and energy. They had barely slept, moving constantly through the tunnel network, hitting the aliens and then disappearing. "Status report," she whispered into her comm as they rested in a small cave that had once been a mining office. "Garcia here. Lee and I set the charges in Section D. Wells sent the map updates. The aliens are pushing hard into the main tunnels now." "Good," Allison said, though she was worried. More Zaxkarine were entering the tunnels each hour. Some squads of human defenders had already been lost. "Stick to the plan. Make them chase us deeper." Olivia looked up from her map screen. "Sergeant, I'm picking up a lot of movement in the eastern tunnels. Something big is coming." Before Allison could respond, her comm unit crackled with Colonel Dawson's voice. "All units, be advised. Our sensors show General Vrockthar himself has entered the tunnel system with his elite guard. He's coming down to lead the fight personally." Allison and Olivia looked at each other. This was what they had been waiting for, but it was happening sooner than expected. "Change of plans," Allison said into her comm. "All units converge on Section E7. Operation Mousetrap is now active." It was time to spring the real trap, and Allison would be the bait. General Vrockthar ducked his head as he entered the main tunnel. Even with the ceiling almost 9 feet high, he still needed to bend slightly. His elite guards, each carrying heavy energy weapons, moved in tight formation around him. "These tunnels are a coward's battlefield," he growled. "But we will hunt down every last human." One of his guards held up a scanner. "Life signs ahead, General. Moving deeper into the tunnel system." "Follow them," Vrockthar ordered. His 4 eyes could see better in the dark than human eyes, but even he found the tunnels confusing. They twisted and turned in ways that made no sense. Meanwhile, Allison and her squad were setting the final pieces of their trap. They had been planning this for days, slowly guiding the Zaxkarine forces toward the deepest part of the mine. "All charges are set in Section F," Tim reported over the comm. "Ready when you are, Sergeant." "Good work," Allison replied. She turned to Olivia, who was checking the old mine map one last time. "Are we sure this is going to work?" Olivia nodded. This was the main chamber when the mine was active. "The support structures are exactly where we need them." Colonel Dawson's voice came through their comms. "Sergeant Reeves, our sensors show Vrocktar's forces are approaching the junction. It's time." Allison took a deep breath. "Understood, sir. We're ready." She looked at her team. "Remember the plan. Make noise, make them follow. but don't get caught." The squad split up, each member taking a different route through the tunnels. Their job was to make enough noise to attract the aliens while avoiding direct combat. Ben fired 3 shots down a side tunnel, the sounds echoing loudly. Tim threw a small explosive that made more noise than damage. Olivia used her knowledge of the tunnel system to create strange echoes that confused the alien scanners. General Vrokthar grew more frustrated with each passing minute. His forces were chasing shadows that always stayed just out of reach. "This is pointless," one of his officers complained. "We should flood these tunnels with gas." "No," Vrokthar insisted. "I want to see the fear in their eyes when we catch them." His scanner beeped. Human life signs, very close. The general smiled with all his sharp teeth showing. There. A small figure darted across a tunnel intersection ahead. One of Vroktar's guards fired, but missed. "After them," the general ordered. The chase led deeper and deeper into the mine. The tunnels grew narrower, forcing the tall aliens to crouch uncomfortably. Finally, they entered a large chamber supported by thick metal columns. Their lights showed mining equipment scattered around, covered in dust. The chamber appeared empty, but Vroktar's scanner showed a human hiding behind some equipment. "We have you now," the general called out. "Show yourself, human." Slowly, Allison stepped out from behind an old mining machine. She was alone, her weapon held low. "Just one." Vrokthar laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "All this trouble from one small human." Allison didn't answer. She just checked her watch and smiled. The general's translator couldn't detect any fear in her expression. That was when Vrokthar felt the first stirring of doubt. "What are you?" he began. Allison pressed a button on her wrist device. Throughout the tunnels, explosive charges detonated with perfect timing. Not to kill, but to block. One by one, the tunnels leading to the chamber collapsed, trapping Vrokthar and his elite guards with Allison. At the same moment, Tim, Ben, and Olivia reached safety in the protected tunnels. "Sergeant Reeves is in position," Tim reported to Colonel Dawson. "Phase 1 complete." In the control room, Colonel Dawson nodded grimly. "Begin Phase 2. Down in the chamber, General Vrokthar realized too late that he had walked into a trap. But he still didn't understand what one small human could possibly do against him and his guards. He was about to find out. Dust filled the chamber as the last tunnel entrance collapsed. General Vrokthar and his 12 elite guards looked around in confusion. Their escape routes were blocked, and now they faced only one small human soldier. "What do you think you've accomplished?" Vrokthar demanded, his voice booming in the enclosed space. "You've trapped yourself with us." Allison smiled. "No, General. I've trapped you with me." The alien general laughed, a harsh sound like grinding metal. "One human against 13 Zaxkarine warriors. Your species truly is delusional." He nodded to his guards. "Take this human alive. I want to question her about their tunnel system." 2 guards moved forward, their weapons ready. Allison didn't run. Instead, she pressed another button on her wrist device. Suddenly, water began pouring into the chamber from hidden pipes in the ceiling. "What is this?" Vrokthar demanded. "Just water," Allison said calmly. "This chamber sits below the colony's main reservoir." The water rose quickly, already ankle-deep. The Zaxkarine guards looked nervously at each other. "This changes nothing," the general growled. "We can swim." "I know," Allison replied. She held up her small pistol. "But can your energy weapons work when wet?" The guards raised their weapons, but they were too late. The water had reached their knees, and when one guard fired, his weapon sputtered and died in a shower of sparks. Another tried to fire, and the weapon exploded in his hands. "Drop your weapons." Vrokthar ordered his troops. "Use hand-to-hand combat." The guards waded toward Allison, who now stood on top of the mining machine, still dry while the water continued to rise. She fired her simple projectile weapon. a technology the Zaxkarine considered primitive, but which worked perfectly well underwater. 2 guards fell immediately. The others hesitated, not used to seeing their comrades killed so easily. Attack! Vrokthar roared, wading through the water himself now. Allison fired again, taking down another guard. Then her gun clicked empty. She tossed it aside and pulled out a long knife. "Now it gets interesting," she said. The water was chest-high on the Zaxkarine now. They were strong swimmers, but the mining equipment scattered around the chamber made it hard to move quickly. Allison dove into the water, disappearing from view. The first guard died before he knew what hit him, Allison's knife finding the gap in his armor under the water. Another felt something grab his legs and pull him under. General Vrokthar watched in growing horror as his elite guards died one by one in the murky water. The human moved like a fish, appearing and disappearing, striking and then vanishing again. Finally, it was just Vrokthar and Allison. The water had stopped rising, reaching just below the ceiling. The general stood with his head still above water, while Allison treaded water a few feet away. "Your species travels between stars," Allison said, breathing hard but steady. "You have energy weapons and ships that can destroy planets, but you never learn to adapt." "This proves nothing," Vrokthar growled, though doubt had crept into his voice. "You use tricks and traps, not honest combat." "We use what works," Allison replied. "That's how humans survive." She moved closer. "But if you want honest combat, I'm ready." The general lunged with all 4 arms, expecting to easily grab the small human. But Allison was no longer there. She dove under, came up behind him, and drove her knife deep into the base of his neck, right at the nerve cluster that Colonel Dawson's intelligence team had identified as a Zaxkarine weak point. The giant alien froze, then slumped forward, paralyzed but still conscious. Allison swam to a hidden panel on the wall and pressed it. A drainage system activated, slowly lowering the water level. "Don't worry, General," she said as she pulled his massive body toward a small ledge. "We don't want you dead. You're much more valuable alive." For the first time in his long military career, General Vrokthar felt true fear, not of dying, but of having completely underestimated his enemy. 3 days after the battle in the mining chamber, Surgeon Allison Reeves woke up in the colony's medical center. Her arms and legs were wrapped in bandages, and her ribs ached with each breath. The fight with the Zaxkarine guards had left its mark on her. A nurse noticed she was awake. "The colonel wants to see you," he said with a smile. "You're quite the hero." Allison shook her head. "I just did my job. How are the others?" "Your squad is fine. They've been waiting for you to wake up." A few minutes later, Colonel Dawson entered the room, followed by Tim, Ben, and Olivia. They all looked tired but happy. "Sergeant," the colonel said, "you've done something no one thought possible. You captured General Vrokthar alive. What happened after I passed out?" Allison asked. Her last memory was of rescue teams breaking through the blocked tunnels. "The Zaxkarine fleet is in chaos," Tim said. "With their general captured, they don't know what to do. Half want to retreat, half want to bomb the whole planet." Olivia nodded. "But they can't attack because we have their precious general." "And that's not all," Colonel Dawson added. "We've been broadcasting the news across the galaxy. The mighty General Vrokthar, defeated by a single human soldier. Other species who feared the Zaxkarine are starting to question their power." Allison tried to sit up, wincing at the pain. "I want to see him." "The general?" Ben asked, surprised. "Why?" "I need to understand our enemy," she said simply. Colonel Dawson looked unsure but finally nodded. "When you're stronger." 2 days later, Allison walked slowly to the secure room where they kept the Zaxkarine general. The paralysis from her knife strike had worn off, but he remained in custody, held by energy barriers that even his great strength couldn't break. When she entered, General Vrokthar was sitting on a large bench, his 4 arms resting on his knees. He looked up, his 4 eyes focusing on her. "You," he said, his voice no longer full of the confidence it once had. "The small human." Sergeant Allison Reeves. She introduced herself, sitting in a chair across from him. "United Earth Marine Corps." "You should have killed me," the general said. "In my culture, defeat is worse than death." "In our culture, life always has value," Allison replied. "Even the life of an enemy." The general studied her, seeing the bandages under her uniform. "You were injured in our fight." "Yes. Your guards were skilled warriors, yet you defeated them. Alone." There was confusion in his voice. "How? You are small, even for a human. Your species has inferior technology. You should have been easy to conquer." Allison smiled slightly. "That was your first mistake. Thinking size and technology determine the outcome of a war." "What else is there?" the general asked, genuinely curious now. "Adaptation," Allison said. "Humans have survived on Earth by adapting to every challenge. We've lived in deserts, Arctic regions, mountains, and jungles. We've survived natural disasters, diseases, and our own mistakes." She leaned forward. "When we met a problem we couldn't solve with strength, we used our minds. When we couldn't win by direct attack, we found another way." The general was silent for a long moment. "My people have been the strongest in this part of the galaxy for 10,000 years. We never needed to adapt." "Until now," Allison said. Outside the colony, in orbit around Nova Terra, the Zax-Kareen fleet still outnumbered the human ships. But they didn't attack. News of their general's capture had spread, along with recordings of his defeat by a single human soldier. In the command room, Governor Martinez and Colonel Dawson received a message from Earth. The president himself appeared on the screen. "The Zax-Kareen High Command has requested talks," he said. "For the first time since the war began, they're willing to negotiate." Colonel Dawson nodded. "And we have their greatest general." "Yes," the president agreed. "They want him back. Make sure he understands humans before we return him." In the quiet room, Allison and General Vrock Thar continued their conversation, two enemies beginning to understand each other. The fate of two species might depend on what they learned. 6 months had passed since the Battle of Nova Terra. Lieutenant Allison Reeves, newly promoted, stood by the window of the peace conference room on the neutral space station Harmony. Earth and Zax-Kareen representatives had been meeting for weeks, working toward a treaty that would end the war. "Lieutenant," a voice called. Allison turned to see Colonel Dawson approaching. "The final meeting is about to start. They want you there." Allison smoothed her dress uniform. "Are you sure, sir? I'm not a diplomat." "No," he agreed, "but you're the reason we're here at all. Both sides respect you." They walked together to the large meeting room. Human representatives sat on one side of a round table, Zax-Kareen officials on the other. Governor Martinez, now serving as Earth's ambassador, nodded to Allison as she entered. And there, leading the Zax-Kareen delegation, was General Vrock Thar. He looked different now. His once perfect armor was simpler, and one of his 4 arms was still healing in a support brace from the battle. The general's 4 eyes found Allison immediately. He rose to his full height and gave a small bow, a human gesture he had learned during his captivity. "Lieutenant Reeves," he said, his voice carrying through the translator, "I am glad you are here today." "General," she replied with a nod. "I'm glad to see you recovered." The meeting began with formal speeches from both sides. The treaty was nearly complete, an agreement that would establish borders and rules for future contact between humans and the Zax-Kareen Empire. When the formal part ended, there was a small reception with food and drinks. Allison found herself standing alone when General Vrock Thar approached her. "My people find it hard to believe the story," he said, his voice quieter now. "That one small human defeated the greatest general of the Empire. Do you still find it hard to believe?" Allison asked. The general was silent for a moment. "No, my time is your guest, taught me much about humans. He looked around the room. Your governor showed me kindness when I expected none. Your doctors healed me when they could have let me suffer. And you spoke with me for hours, helping me understand. We needed you to understand, Allison said simply. Yes, because you knew I would return to my people. Vrockthar nodded. A clever strategy. Also the right thing to do. The general made a sound that Allison now recognized as thoughtful agreement. When I first saw humans, I laughed. You were small, your technology primitive compared to ours. I thought victory would be easy. And now? Allison asked. Now I understand that true strength is not always visible. Your species survives because you adapt, because you work together in ways my people never considered necessary. He looked directly at her. You could have destroyed us after capturing me. Many of your leaders wanted to. That's not who we want to be, Allison said. No, and that is perhaps your greatest strength. The general extended one of his hands, not the traditional greeting of his people, but a human handshake. My people have much to learn from yours, Lieutenant Reeves. Allison took his large hand in her much smaller one. Around them, both human and Zaxkarine delegates watched in surprise. And perhaps we have things to learn from you, she replied. Later that day, the peace treaty was signed. The war that had begun with a misunderstanding and a laugh ended with a handshake and new respect. As Allison prepared to return to Earth, she looked out at the stars from the space station window. Somewhere out there, other alien species were watching to see how this conflict ended. The galaxy was full of beings who might laugh at humans until they learned what humans could do. The future would not be easy, but for the first time since first contact, it looked hopeful.